Hey y'all, insight number 3. This week I've taken it from the manual, and it's talking about sort of these groups of people that have this interaction around Christ's birth and this witness of Christ's birth and how it changes them. So we're looking at how does their interaction with Christ change them, shape them, and how can you relate that to you? So we've covered the call of Joseph, we've covered the joy of the shepherds, and we're looking now at Mary, which I've entitled Mary, Dauntless Bravery and a Heart Filled with Heaven's Light, because that's just what I felt when I was reading this. So we're going to be in Luke 2, verses 19 and then 48 through 52. So let's look at that. So 19, this is after the shepherds have come and seen baby Jesus and just been like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, and so exciting, and just marveling at this child that they knew was going to redeem mankind and be the savior of the world. So in verse 19 just says, and Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. She was a meditator. She was a grounded meditator. She was a thinker, a woman of great faith. So I love that, and we'll get into more of that later, because when I was reading that, I did have this very strong impression, and it's a question I've got that I one day will find the answer to, but I'm going to share that with you in a minute. But let's cover the rest of the verses. So 48 through 52 talks about like when they were at the temple and he was teaching them when he was 12. So this is some years later now. They've been to Egypt, they've come back, they're doing their regular annual pilgrimage to the temple because obviously they lived away from the temple, so much like we would now if we lived hours, like a plane ride or, like an 8-hour drive, we'd maybe go once or twice a year to the temple. That would be our thing. So this is their yearly temple trip. And they were with a company of people, as we read about, and Jesus was suddenly not there, and they'd sort of like, but I thought you had him. No, I thought you had him. And they're like, oh my gosh, we don't know where he is. Go searching for him everywhere, because remember, Joseph is his protector, Mary's his mother. They're all like, oh my gosh, if we lose Christ, God's going to be so angry at us. So we're his protectors, we've got to watch him. And at 12, he's probably got siblings by now. So you can imagine, when you all leave the chapel and you're in different vehicles and you just think, oh, I hope somebody's got that kid because I don't have them. And you get home, oh, thank goodness someone else dropped them off, that happens. With the big awards and the big families, that does happen. So you can see how that would easily have happened, especially with a 12-year-old, because at that point, they're fairly, okay by themselves. They probably need some adult supervision, but generally can take care of themselves quite well. So they go looking for him, and they find him at the temple, and he's talking with the philosophers, the doctors there, and he's both hearing them and asking them questions. So it shows that Jesus is an active listener. Even at 12 years old, he is an active listener and inquisitive, asking questions. So active listener, meditator, and grounded person. Who do you think taught him that? Of course God, but do you think Mary did too? Because she was the same way. So let's go on. That's my thought that I had. But anyway. So you read on and they say, where were you? Not in an accusing, angry way, just a really worried parent way. Where were you? We looked everywhere. He's like, well, didn't you know? You've brought me up to go and do my Father's work. I know that that's what I'm here to do. And that's what you've taught me to do, and to teach me to go and do that when necessary. So that's what I was doing. And he just, they were like, it says there in verse 50, and they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. Now that's not entirely true. They just didn't really accept that as an answer. I know you need to be about your Father's work, but if you're going to go do that, you need to tell us where you are. We still got to watch over you, kind of thing. It's not that they were like, don't get it. No, it's slightly different meaning there. If you read it in, say, the ESV or the NIV, it's, worded a bit better. And then again in 51, they came back down to Nazareth, and the subject was done. They're not going to bring it up again because, we don't want arguments. It just says, but his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. She just kept them with her. And then the very last verse there, we love that. It says, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So it's like, how did that interaction there, and how did being Jesus's mother affect Mary? How did that shape her and change her as a woman, because she was only like 14, 15 when she had him? That's incredibly young for a mother these days, but then was more common, being that their lifespans weren't as long. So, keep that in mind. But still, just who she was at that age, yeah, it's beautiful. So, dauntless bravery and a heart filled with heaven's light. So let's look at it. The Christmas song, Mary, Did You Know? It's like, well, it's a lovely song, and I get that. And for those who, and I love it. I have it on my Christmas playlist. But I always think, of course, Mary knew. She was a smart girl. That's why God picked her to have Christ, because she was smart, intelligent, capable, fearless, like totally committed to the faith that she had. So yes, of course she knew. Maybe not all the things, like all the little things, and how they would unfold, but yes, she knew what Jesus would be and her role in his journey. She knew that. She didn't exactly know that she'd have to go off to Egypt in the middle of the night, or that they'd end up living in Nazareth, which is quite a ghetto and a slum, because it was the best place to hide out. But she made the best of everything that happened, and she did everything she could with absolute amazingly awesomeness, grace and mercy and kindness. But again, a meditator and a grounder. So if she's going to be doing that at that young age, yeah, that is one awesome person. So from these verses, we get a glimpse of Mary's character, and we can see she was indeed a woman of more worth than rubies, embodying the bravery and faithfulness of the best of womanhood, right up there with like Eve and Emma Smith and Esther and Sariah and Elizabeth and a whole bunch of them, whole lot of them, right, that we read about in the scriptures. And yes, the men are fantastic, and don't get me wrong, but those women, the women that were in Christ's life, were incredible women, and something that we can all aspire to be more like. So I'm curious, and this is where my question came up again, I'm curious if Mary taught Jesus meditation and grounding in mortality, because Jesus goes on to continue this throughout his ministry. When we read more about him and what he did, he would take himself away from the crowd and go and pray, meditate, ground, because what he was doing for a mortal person was a lot. And, we get exhausted from doing things like that. And he was doing it constantly and having crowds of people just follow him around. And he knew what was coming for him. And that's really heavy. So you need to go and have those meditative moments of prayer, or just general meditation and thought and thinking, and like hearing that inspiration, or feeling that, I am doing a good job, and just going through that. And, like people aren't listening, but some people are, and you've got to go through that. So I'm wondering if she taught him how to do that in mortality, because I think he would have been that kind of person anyway. And I'm just wondering, being that Mary was like that, did that connect in with teaching Christ how to do that as a child from being very young? Would he sit there with her and meditate? Because wouldn't that be amazing if that was true? That you could just see them sitting there meditating and maybe praying together, I just, I think I do. I think it is, but I can't prove it, but I think it is. What do you think? I'd love to hear if you think the same, or you're like, oh my gosh, that's an interesting thought. Tell me. Put it in the comments. I just love it. Because these scriptures would indicate it was so. So what do you think Jesus learnt from Mary and Joseph that developed the Jesus we know? When we know that their interaction as his parents changed them, and their interaction shaped them to be amazing parents for, the rest of the kids that came. But also, what did Jesus actually learn from Mary and Joseph that shaped him into the Jesus that we know? Interesting, right? It's just awesome. Now, David O. McKay, he said, meditation is the language of the soul. It is defined as a form of private devotion or spiritual exercise consisting in deep, continued reflection on some religious theme. Meditation is a form of prayer. So if you're thinking that meditation is some new thing, it's not. Meditation is as old as the earth and people on it. They might not have had an app on their phone that guided them through it, but meditation is nothing new. Meditation has been done for a very long time, thousands and thousands of years, and it works. So if you haven't tried this, I would highly recommend it. And look more into this, think more of these qualities that Mary and Joseph had, and how did that shape Christ that we knew? Did they indeed teach him some things that he really needed to know to get through the mortality that he had to live? I think so. And I think that's pretty cool. So to think on that. And hang around for the next one. We're going to go and talk about Samina and Anna, because they're really awesome too. Okay, I'll see you there.